Are you curious on what is going to happen between the Los Angeles Rams and New York Giants in this contest? You guys have heard my opinion on it. Find out what my man Brad has to say about this matchup, his prediction, and more on this episode of the Locked On Rams podcast.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rams Nation, how's it going? As always, it is your boy, your host, Sosa Kremenjas. I'm a fantasy analyst at PFF and your host here at the Locked On Rams podcast, your number one daily podcast covering the Los Angeles Rams and part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you guys for always making us your first daily listen here at the Locked On Rams pod. And this one is a little bit different. We typically do these on Wednesdays. For those that are watching on YouTube, I know you can see it right off the rip. For those that are listening on podcast form, you don't know what is on the other side here, but I'm joined by my man, Brad Motter. We had some, small scheduling issues earlier this week, but we know you guys love these episodes, and they're personally my favorite every week as well. And I know Brad loves coming back on here as well. So we made it work. My man, Brad, they've heard me talk about this game between the Rams and the Giants that's coming up here on Sunday in just a few days. I've shared my prediction, my matchups to watch, everything, and then some. Before we dive into your opinion on all of these things, my man, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I love it because I look like I just walked off a golf course. You look like you just got out of a pickup game. Here we are throwing it down, talking football today. So it's awesome. And you're right. I love this. And I couldn't miss. I had to do something on Wednesday and I texted you right away. And I was like, when can we make up? How do I get back here? So joining you weekly is always a pleasure. So excited for this week too, because we've had some, mentally struggle games and where you're not sure about the matchup that's coming up and what Rams are going to show up and what kind of defense are we going against. And I don't want to say this is a cupcake, but man, it sure looks tasty on the other side of Sunday, seeing this matchup and all those injuries that you're going to let us know about here in a second.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the Rams schedule, you go to Arizona, you play those guys, you play the Bucs, you play all these tough teams. I mean, they got to feel pretty good about this one. Not to say that, any team's a cakewalk, like you said, anything can happen. Even last year, I mean, I think a lot of us expected that the Rams were going to kill the Giants in that game, and it ended up being a pretty close game. And it took a Darius Williams interception there at the end on a potential game-winning drive to basically seal that win for the Rams. But like you mentioned, a lot of injury updates to provide here for the Rams outside of Darius Williams, like we talked about on the last few days of this podcast here. Darius Williams won't go. He's going to be on short-term IR, out for the next 3 weeks. But outside of him, it sounds like everybody will be good to go for the Rams, which is obviously a nice check mark for that. You want to be as healthy as possible. And we talked about, they're going to kind of have to suck it up last week on that Thursday night game where maybe you get a few more injuries than normal. But after that, you get that nice 10-day break, which they've now taken. It's sort of like that mini bye, as they call it. So the Rams look pretty good heading into this one. Now, unfortunately for the Giants, not so good. I mean, probably as best as it could be. They had like a litany of injuries on offense. So you look at some of these updates here. Kenny Golladay did not practice on Thursday. Probably not going to play in this one. It's not good. Of course, he's their number one receiver. Saquon Barkley sidelined on Thursday. He's not going to play. I mean, his ankle was the size of a grapefruit, like we talked about. I don't know how you could possibly play on that. Daniel Jones had the concussion. He was a limited participant. So could be a 50-50 type of decision. We'll see later this week. I mean, we won't be able to update you guys, but we'll keep an eye on that, of course. And then Sterling Shepard, Kadarius Toney, and Darius Slayton, the remaining three receivers, all did practice in some sort of a capacity on Wednesday/Thursday. So those guys probably going to be good to play, which is going to make it at least somewhat of an interesting game. I mean, if they didn't have those guys, they basically would have been running Brad and I out there at receiver. Yeah. So that would not have been good, I tell you that. But Brad, when you look at this contest, you see all these injuries, and we'll get to your prediction and all that juicy stuff later. How are you feeling about the Rams entering this game at 4-1? The Giants already sort of look like they're kind of playing for draft status position as opposed to, trying to actually fight for a playoff spot.
Yeah, Joe Judge, man, this has been a challenge for him this year. And this is, I think, the second or third coach that McVay's gone up against that was also appeared on the Flying Coaches. And so I got to hear, Joe Judge talk this offseason, really kind of dig everything that he is really trying to do up there. But what are you going to do when your team is just falling apart injury-wise, right? You can't really put anything together there. Daniel Jones, we're still waiting to see what is his ceiling. but he's getting injured like this. And he's had guys around him. If it's not him, it's people around him, his O-line, his wide receivers. And, wide receivers are getting healthy, but you got Mike Glennon throwing to you. And the Bears a few years ago thought Mike Glennon was going to be the savior, but here we are. He's a backup to Daniel Jones in New York. And really curious. You kind of described it pretty well. Daniel Jones is a mobile quarterback that can get around and really produces some challenges for you, where Mike Glennon's a statue in that pocket. And especially with the Rams, the amount of pressure they've been able to get on the quarterback, and surprisingly, their sack number is so low compared to the pressure we've gotten there. I think this is the week where the Rams D-line and that pressure, I think if you're a coordinator as well, you just got to dial that up and say, hey, if it's Glennon, we got to go after him and really kind of convert on those sacks. If it's Daniel Jones, like, I'm just nervous for the New York franchise. Like, I don't know if that's rushing him back too early, especially on a concussion. We talked about this a little off air, and that was one of those plays where he rolls out left and he's going for that pylon and decides that maybe he doesn't have the guy beaten out and he's got to turn up field. Probably should have gone to the pylon and dove for it and maybe protect himself a little bit more. And instead, he's got a really wobbly concussion when he got up, and those ones are scary. So we've seen it with Brandon Cooks in the past. It's not something you want to rush back into, but if I'm the New York Giants and you're looking at your record and you're looking at who's coming into town, I'd probably go with Mike Glennon just for the safety of my own players. Aaron Donald on the other side with some of that banged up that they've got on that O-line. I don't know if I want to put my future quotes for you guys that aren't watching YouTube. I don't know if I want to put the future of my quarterback and my team out there against this defense who pressure-wise has been top of the leagues.
Yeah, I posted that on Twitter. The Rams defense right now second in the league in pressures, and it might not feel like it, but that is the case. They have 108 on the season. I think only the Dallas Cowboys have more, and I think they were only at like 110, so 2 more pressures than the Rams. And I don't know if that doesn't tell you how well this D-line and this blitzing package has worked for these guys. I'm not really sure what to say because, we've talked about Justin Hollins getting injured, all these different injuries that they've kind of had up front there. And yet they've just been able to continuously pressure quarterbacks. So like you mentioned, maybe not the best week to rush him back, but hey, if he passes the protocol for concussions, I guess he's good to go. We'll see what happens ultimately, but it is going to be. Yeah,
I'd be out there faking it. I'd be like, well, you're holding up the letter 3 and, I'd be faking it. I'd be trying to get out of this, but listening to your crossover and she was kind of telling us that, hey, I know this guy personally. I've interviewed him, talked with him. He's going to try to get on the field if he's healthy. So if he can pass it, he'll be out there. But man, as a Giants fan or somebody in that organization, I'd be a little worried because, like you mentioned, that pressure, it's going to start paying off for the Rams in the form of sacks and turnovers. It's only a matter of time. And I know our fans have been frustrated with the production of that defense. But if you see those numbers on that pressure, it's only a matter of time before things start clicking.
That's 100%. I think at some point, those are going to have to start turning into sacks. They just have to. You're getting so many pressures. At some point, they're going to start converting. And you talked about it. There is some issues on their offensive line as well in terms of injuries. We'll see if left tackle Andrew Thomas can go in this one. You guys can always follow us on Twitter at QB's MEP, at Locked On Rams, and at LA_Rambling Bear, and on YouTube at Locked On Rams. And you guys have heard Brad and I discuss betting on this podcast many times here. My man, Brad, I shouted you out, I want to say maybe 5-6 episodes ago. I felt bad. You went 4-1 with the Chargers, 4-1 with the Rams. So close. But I mean, that's the game. I mean, sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. You went risky, didn't get it. If you guys want to partake in some of that action, go check out betonline.ag. They are your #1 spot for all the pro and college football action this season. Head over to their website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 100% welcome bonus on your first deposit. You guys can go take advantage of all the parlays, different lines to bet, sports, anything you like. They've got you guys entirely covered. They are your fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports, from football to basketball to boxing, all the way to horse racing. Don't wait. Make sure to take advantage of the 2021 season and all the offers available right now. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. And Brad, now we can dive into some of these matchups, maybe certain things that we want to look at in terms of, we'll look at the Rams offense first, right? This offense has been pretty damn good, I think, for the most part. Sure, there's been some glitches here and there. And maybe, that first half in Seattle that just kind of felt like the 2020 Rams offense, maybe for the most part, where they kind of just didn't really get going. They got in the red zone at least. They maybe could have came out of that half with 10 points on the board, which is still not great. But of course, the Matthew Stafford interception, we've talked about all that stuff. Now, outside of that, I mean, for the most part, this offense has clicked. They've done well. We've seen spurts where they're running the ball very effectively, where they're passing it 7, 10, 12 yards, kind of that intermediate area of the field. And then we've seen other times where Matthew Stafford is just going, balls to the wall. I'm going to go 75 yards straight for the jugular. I don't got time for these 7-yard passes. So it's kind of been a mix of everything. And I think that's part of this intrigue here when it comes to the offense is that how do you prepare for them? I mean, they feel multiple in the sense that they can really do anything. And so, when you look at this matchup, and I talked about it earlier this week, the Giants defense, not that great. And Patricia even mentioned it as well. Patricia being, the host of the Locked On Giants podcast. She knows that team a lot better than you and I do. And she said, the run defense has not been good. The secondary, even though they've got a lot of talent, a lot of players individually that look like superstar talents, not been living up to the hype. So when you look at this offense, is there any one area that you're just like, come on, Sean, come on, Mr. McVay, I want to see this? Is it potentially a running game?
I think, I think the way that you put that together is thinking about as a boxer, as an MMA fighter, right? You're setting up the jab to set up the big hook, right? And I think that's what they got to do with the run game is get the run game going early where those safeties starts creeping up a little bit. Your cornerbacks are coming in trying to make plays in the box, and you hit them with that play action after pounding it down their throat for a quarter and a half, and you get the shot play to DeSean Jackson. You get him where he's 20 yards away from any defender, and you get those guys creeping up and you can go over the top with them. And of course, Sean McVay knows that he has Robert Woods coming off of a season career game there, I guess you should say. And being able to utilize that middle of the field, that what Robert Woods has really been known for here in Los Angeles, that like 15-yard in route, right? Just kind of get up the field, kind of find that middle space, sit down and go get it. And we're going to see Matt Stafford continue to find him. And I think that's going to only feed off of what the run game can provide for him. So yeah, it goes back to where this Rams offense in 2018, when they were high flying and putting up yards left and right, it was set up through Todd Gurley in the ground game and then allow us to go deep down the field with some deep threats. So yeah, if Patricia, who knows this team best, is saying, look, we are bad against the run, Sean McVay, I really want him not to get too cute, because sometimes he kind of rolls into a game going, it's the Giants. I could throw 5 times in a row to start the game. And, I've got Matt Stafford now and unlimited opportunities through the air. But don't forget about Darrell Henderson and what he can do on the ground, because my man has been, I'm seeing on Twitter, he's not running as fast as he was before. And that may be true, but he's finding holes. He's tough to tackle still. And we've got to get him going. So the defense at least has to think about him and then send, DeSean, Cooper Kupp running long on the pass. But this is one of those games where we'll get to predictions, but we should blow them out. This should not be close. Offensively, we should be able to dominate them. And defensively, we should be able to take advantage depending on who's at quarterback. But man, I really want to see the mix and not Sean McVay kind of getting too cute because we're playing the Giants and he thinks that we already got this in the bag. So let me pull out some of my fun Sean McVay tricks, which we all love. And if they execute, I'm going to tell you next time we talk, wow, how wasn't that crazy play awesome? But run the dang ball, set up the play action, take the deep shots. I want to see 3 deep shots, whether it's Kupp or DeSean Jackson. Take the shot, and please, we've talked about this many of times. Try to throw it 10 yards over DeSean and let him go get it. Do not underthrow him. That is the last player on this roster you should try to underthrow. Put it up there, man. Let him go run underneath it.
I would love to see that. And if there's any one player that's, I'm not going to say familiar against this defense because, every year it changes, but DeSean's played a lot of games against the Giants. He's done a lot of damage there. I mean, he played for Philly like for a decade. He's played for Washington for 3, 4, 5 years. He's done a lot of damage to the Giants and their franchise, and their fans probably cannot stand the guy. I mean, I can't even imagine how many yards he has against those guys. So it would be awesome to see him go over the top. And, I definitely agree. I think there's going to be a lot of holes. And like you mentioned, even though I was one of those people that said Darrell Henderson looks a little bit skittish almost. Like, there just seems to be like some sort of
a broken rib will do that for you,
That might do it, yeah. I'm the guy sitting here on the couch, broken rib, and I can't even record. So never mind going out there and getting blasted by 250-pound defenders who are literally trying to take your head off every snap. So, that might do it. But at the same time, this guy's averaging like 4.9 yards per carry, which is just insane. If you're at that 5-yard or higher yards per carry average, that's like elite. You're producing absurd numbers. So he's been great. I mean, there's really no complaint there. I think he's been very good in terms of his vision and setting up runs. And like you mentioned, if this run defense is a little bit leaky, which according to Patricia, it is, might be this game where you get that guy rolling. You get Sony Michel in there as well. You don't want to exactly just run Darrell Henderson into the ground. And you try to do what the Cowboys did last week, where they rushed over 200 yards against this defense, right? I mean, Zeke and Tony Pollard, back, forth. You're just getting all the way up the field like that. But something tells me Sean McVay is not going to want to do it. I don't know.
And for me, it's like if you're going up against a banged up team across the board and a defense that has been struggling, what do I want to do? I want to pound them to where they're tired, and then I want to make them think. I want them to have to go, like, I don't want them to just go, oh, he's passing, or, obvious rundown. I want them to have to always be thinking. I know you should be doing that in every single game, every single situation. Yeah. But with this team specifically, who can't stop the run right now, and they've got some trouble over the top, like, get them to where they are thinking, they are tired, and you can hit them with whatever you want. So Sean McVay, use the whole play sheet, get out there, get creative, but stay consistent, man. I mean, if you put an over-under on it, I think I got to see at least over 22 carries for Darrell Henderson in this game.
I would love to see that. I think that's like that sweet spot where you want to get at least 20, maybe 30 rushing attempts total between he and Michel, and maybe even Jake Funk. You never know. Yep. But just be a little bit more balanced. But either way, I'm not going to complain. I think you just want to see a 30 burger here. If that means, we're throwing the ball 57 times, then so be it. I'm not so incessant on the balance thing. I'm more of a let's produce, and I'm just trying to find the best way to throw up points on the board and get up out of there with a win. So we'll see what happens in just a second here. We're going to flip to the other side, talk about that Rams defense, and then get into the predictions. I know my man Brad, I think I know where he's headed with this one. Yeah. But before we get into that, make sure to tune back in next week when we recap what happens in this contest, as well as what's going to happen for the Rams moving forward throughout the rest of this season. You guys have heard me talk about the Built Bar here many times on this podcast. Listen, I've tried a bunch of different protein bars, basically everything on the market. Some are chalky, some don't taste good, some are expensive, some don't even have hardly any protein in them, so I don't know why they're even labeled as protein bars. You do not have any of these issues with the Built Bar. They're absolutely delicious. They have 9 different flavors, so you can get whatever you like. I'm sure they have something that's going to appeal to you. They're low in calories. They have 19 grams of protein per bar. They're high in fiber, and they even work for you if you are on the keto diet. You even get a free cooler with your purchase while the supplies last. All you have to do is just go check out BuiltBar.com and use the promo code LOCK15, and you'll get 15% off your next order. Use the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at BuiltBar.com. And as always, thank you guys so much for always making us your first daily listen here at the Locked On Rams podcast. For your second daily listen, go check out the Williamson and Peacock NFL podcast. These guys are going to update you with all the biggest NFL news every single day in under 30 minutes, entirely free wherever you get your podcasts. Now, my man Brad, before we dive into this last segment here, I know I'm going to get questions. Listen, I'm wearing a Kobe Bryant jersey for the LA Lakers fans, the LA Angelinos, the locals.
There you go.
The NBA is back, all right? Kobe's a legend. If you don't got one of these old school throwbacks in your closet, you gotta get right. I mean, come on, let's pick it up here, all right? Brad, now we're getting into the juicy stuff, right? The other side of the ball. I think we both expect the Rams offense to do well, and I think pretty much everyone else does too. Personally, it would be a disappointment to me if I don't see 30 plus on that board, right? And the other side is where it's kind of interesting because we don't really still know who's going to play. Is it going to be Daniel Jones? And if it is, maybe it's a bit of a different game plan versus if it's Mike Glennon. But either way, when you look at that side of the ball, and we've seen a lot of kind of up and down performances, even quarters from this defense. Sometimes they look great. Tom Brady, one week they're stopping what's the best offense at the time in Tom Brady and the Bucs. The next week, they look like they can't stop anything against what's one of the best offenses at the time and a mobile quarterback in Kyler Murray and the Cardinals. So when you go into this game, is there anything that's you're kind of looking out for? Is there anything that's going to make you feel better moving into this next second half of the schedule, I guess?
Yeah, I want to see Robert Rochell take a step from game one on a short week when his whole team is telling us, hey, we were really impressed with what he did. Well, if you go to Twitter, everyone's going, oh, rookie, why are we starting a rookie? And, so like, I want to see him be able to handle that, take that next step in development. If he's out there for, X amount of snaps, gets the start again, I want to see him take that step, and he's going to get this opportunity. If these wide receivers are coming back in the plentifulness, sounds like 3 of them are coming back, no matter who is throwing it. Mike Glennon is still a professional athlete, right? I can make fun of him all I want. We can call him statue in the pocket. the boy's got he's got money in the bank right now. People have been paying him a lot of money to come in and do this.
That's right.
Still expect him to go out there and try to sling the rock. And if he's got some targets to go to, it has been a weak spot of the Rams, as you mentioned. Like, one week they are shutting down Tom Brady. The next week they can't stop a nosebleed. So it's going to be interesting to see how he bounces back off a short week, had extended practice with knowing in his head, I am now the starter. And then also guys like David Long Jr., with D Will down. Like, it's not like hey, you got benched, go to the end and you're going to get 3 snaps. Like, that defense and that back end of our secondary is going to get playing time. So need to have a short memory back there, just as our quarterback would need a short memory. Go out there. And I think our secondary against these wide receivers, if our Rams can't get to the quarterback, and we've said earlier in the show, they've been having some pressure. So you're hoping for some quick throws. I'm looking at that secondary to kind of take this really big step and say, hey, we are a lot better than the New York Giants. And we're going to show you in this game via turnovers, via knocked balls. I think I saw Jalen Ramsey is second in the NFL as far as batted balls when thrown his way. Continue to do that type of stuff. I think turnovers is going to be a big thing in this. If you want a 30 burger, you want to blow out, it starts on that defense side of the ball, because we feel pretty good on that offense side of the ball. Just give them some better field position, not giving up points, and keeping this defense off the field and allowing our offense to go tire out that team that we just talked about can't stop the run, is, susceptible to the deep throw. So that's really what I'm looking for. Robert Rochell is the first one. David Long Jr., who, probably had a pretty humble moment being benched and, kind of nationally or locally thrown under the bus. And he's going to get some run. And then, as we've talked about in that deep secondary, we're still looking for a few guys to kind of make their appearance and kind of put their stamp into this team. And so I'm kind of looking to see what's going to happen in that secondary. I know the pressure's coming. I know Aaron Donald will find a way to get there. And, our outside linebackers have really kind of outshined what we kind of really expected for them coming in. So I'm keeping an eye on that secondary and these quote unquote, for you guys that are watching YouTube, air quotes here, healthy wide receivers coming back. And it really depends on that quarterback, but excited to see those guys in this matchup this week. You'd think it would be an easy challenge for them, but hey, every week in the NFL is going to be, another day they got to go out there and grind.
Yeah, it's never easy, right? And I think a lot of these receivers, they're really good. Like, I don't know why the Giants are not more productive. I mean, Sterling Shepard is one of the most underrated players in the NFL, in my opinion. Kenny Golladay, like, this dude was a baller with Matthew Stafford, obviously, throughout his time in Detroit. Kadarius Toney, a first-round pick from Florida. We saw what he could do last week. I think he had like 160 yards receiving in only like his second game where he did anything. So clearly a lot of talent. I mean, they're not lacking talent at all. I think Jason Garrett, their offensive coordinator, might have something to do with what's going on over there in terms of the lack of production. He's kind of known to be that guy. So anyways, other than that, I expect to see, a lot of pressure up front. I just want to see these guys start to convert some of those pressures into sacks. Of course, you mentioned that the secondary, we're all going to be looking at the secondary. Is anybody going to step up here? What is the cornerback rotation going to look like? I'm assuming David Long is going to go back to the nickel spot where he played the end of last game in Thursday Night Football against the Seahawks, which is kind of new to him. He's never really done that in the NFL. And now you mentioned it again, Robert Rochell finally getting that full 10 days of preparation. You're the guy. There's not going to be any, we're tossing you out on the field, kind of learn on the run kind of thing. So, it's going to be a little bit easier for him as well. Terrell Burgess talked about this many times. Hopefully he finds his way onto the field. If he can't get on the field this week when they're banged up across the board, it might be time to just say, you know what, it's not going to happen this season.
Give me 15 snaps. Give me 15. Like,
please.
Just dabble them out there a little bit. Give them some opportunity. You're right. And if not, you mentioned kind of the Rams in this world of trading, and there's some people out there that they've been connected to. I mean, is there just that lack of interest in the building for a guy that they went and drafted and we're really excited about? Is he in the potential mix? If they're in for a safety, would it be a player for player with kind of some cap relief there? I don't know, but let Burgess get out there and flex his muscles a little bit. Totally with you. Find a way to get him on the field. He's a great tackler. And that's something that the Rams in that secondary and that defense have struggled with a little bit. So let's get him out there. I'm with you.
I would love to see it. I mean, I just think this guy's so talented. I've talked about it on this podcast. I think he's the best safety on the roster. All right. And I know I'm just a guy who's not at practice. I don't know as much as the coaches do, of course, but Coaches
You're just
make
a
mistakes.
guy in a Lakers jersey. What do you know?
Just a guy in a Kobe Bryant throwback, right? Listen, coaches make mistakes too. I mean, we're talking about Raheem Morris. He trotted out David Long Jr. for 4 weeks and then just yanked him for a rookie. Like, he made a mistake putting David Long out there in his own mind, I guess, not in my mind. But clearly coaches don't always make the right choices. So I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm saying that it's time to let's see what this kid's got. Like, he's been on the sidelines long enough, I think, for a year and a half now. So we'll see what happens. I think, we're kind of all expecting a pretty good outcome for the defense on this side of the ball here in this game. Brad, they've heard my prediction. I'm kind of a flake here. On Patricia's podcast, I said it was going to be like 27-16, and then I just became a coward. And then on this podcast, I said it was going to be a 30 burger, like 31-14. I'm going to stick with that. I'll say 31-14 for the Rams or 31-13, something like that, depending on if Daniel Jones plays or not. The floor is yours, my friend. What are you looking at in terms of the scoreline? For the record, both of us had a W in the schedule breakdown series here in week 6 for the Rams.
Yeah, it's not, do they win? It's by how much, right? So I'm seeing this again in this 35-17, because I also don't trust this defense enough to pitch that shutout against the team that they probably should pitch the shutout against. And maybe this is the defense always listens to our podcast every week. So maybe this is the motivational Friday episode. They get to hear it going into the weekend and they go, look, I got to prove that kid wrong. But I think it's 35-17. I think I am hammering this spread this week for the Rams. And I've done that before and it's been good. It's been bad. So I don't know how this is going to play out, but this is also one that kind of scares me at the end of the day, as I get so cocky that this thing, as you mentioned, the last time we played, this thing was super close. You go back to even playing in New York against another team, the Jets last year, and that thing didn't turn out well for us. So you can never overlook a team in the NFL, but this should be a game where we get up early and we start to control the clock. We start to control how the defense will play against us and then put them in a position to be Daniel Jones or Mike Glennon, where they're throw, and they're playing from behind and goes back into what we just talked about, this defense taking advantage of this matchup, making some turnovers, those type of things, and getting good field position, easy points to the Rams. So 35-17. I think I'm even being kind here. Write it down, take a picture. I don't care what you do with it. That's what's happening.
Yeah, I hope Giants fans don't come demolish us like the Cardinals fans did, because that was not pretty.
I loved it though. I love just twisting it and just letting them know what's up. And occasionally you're wrong and they got to come back. But we'll get another shot at those Cardinals and I'll talk just as much trash.
I like it, man. Hopefully we get back on that one. We'll see. It looks like we're both expecting a pretty big win in this one. Hopefully the Rams can get out healthy and, show us why they are this Super Bowl team. Take care of business on the road and prepare for, guess who? Jared Goff next week. That's going to be an interesting one. We're going to have plenty to talk about in that game. Wouldn't it be funny and awkward if the Detroit Lions are ready to come back to LA, Jared Goff at 0-6, man, that would be a big talking point. If Mr. 16, Mr. California can get his first win against his former team. Oh my goodness, that would be funny. We'll see. We'll dive into all of that next week. Make sure you guys tune back into the Locked On Rams podcast next week. We're going to recap this game and take care of everything you need to know about the Rams moving forward into that next contest. As always, you guys can always follow us on Twitter at QBsMEP, at LA_RamblingBear, and at Locked On Rams, and on YouTube at Locked On Rams. Please subscribe or follow to get our latest episodes, content, breaking news, and a whole lot more.